Well, the literature part of it comes early on in my life, way before any of this other stuff happened. And I come from a working class background. So to be a person from a working class background who ends up writing poetry, which is atypical in many ways, especially back at the time that I was around going to school and all that. It made me think that if I could read and write poetry, then other people certainly could too. So as time went on and I, then got into college, I started to make things happen with, having readings, having student readings, being part of readings at the university, meeting people, and doing that sort of thing. So that's, I guess, at that point is when the activism came into play. When I got down here, there was a guy who was a student assistant in the English department and here at Wayne. And I was young, and it seemed to me like everybody else in the English department were much older. The young guy I kind of connected with, he was really like 21 or 2, so he was not much younger than me. And we connected on a musical level when he discovered one evening that he went to see Kraftwerk at a club. And of course, I went to see Kraftwerk because I liked them. And he saw me there, and then he thought, oh, this guy's probably into music like I am, and I was. And eventually, I was doing so many gigs, and he said, I can't do all these gigs with you because I've got my own thing to do. Here's an idea. Why don't you come into the studio? We'll record all the music and on a recording, and then you can go in public and play it and then perform like that for the times we can't all come with you. And so that started the door into my recording, quote unquote, career. But anyway, we started doing that. We took the tape, the reel tape, because that's how things were done back then, to WDET, to a popular show on DET. And we played, for the first time, we played the tracks. And people listening to that show started calling up saying, who is this group? Where are they playing and stuff? And we were in the studio going, there's no group. So it was kind of on the spot there that what has kind of become known in Detroit history, literature history, and so forth, became the Magic Poetry Band, M.L. Liebler and the Magic Poetry Band. Well, I'm nothing but super happy about it. It's kind of what I personally set out to do when I started, and going back to combining music as a door opener. When I first came to Wayne, there was no creative writing scene here at all. In fact, there weren't even creative writing classes because nobody was interested. And when they brought me here and they hired me, they kind of kept apologizing that they didn't have any creative writing classes to offer me, which I could have cared less about. I didn't even think in those terms. I just wanted to, teach whatever they wanted me to teach. So I thought, okay, we'll do a fundraiser. What I'm going to do is I'm going to book a bunch of Detroit poets, all different types, and I'll book some of the well-known punk bands down here, and we'll have the poetry first, and then the punk bands that were known, they had their own audiences, would play at, say, 11. And I called these things Rock and Read. And we did the first one. It was May of '87. I shan't forget it because it was so bizarre. We went through all these different poets. It was like, I don't know how many. It might have been 50. It could have been 40. But it was a big list of all the poets around Detroit. And people really responded to it. And so when we were done with that part, I introduced the first band. And the audience started booing. They wanted more poetry. And I thought, this is the craziest. Are you kidding me? Just quite frankly gone, I would say bonkers. So while I expected '87 to last all until '88. It's just never, went backwards. It's been the same and it gets bigger all the time. Well, I think both have been kind of growing together. I mean, I wouldn't say poetry is responsible for that, but it's certainly come along with it and opened up many more venues and places to do poetry, especially in the city of Detroit. New cafes have opened and new art spaces have opened. And it's all been part of that revitalization. Where there's maybe a place or two to do stuff at, there's probably 10 different places now to do things, to have readings and performances and things like that. That didn't exist back then. And even if it did exist back then, nobody would come. I mean, for example, in the Cass Corridor, which, by the way, people wouldn't even go, where the old Miami is. People wouldn't even go that far off campus. From there to downtown was all like prostitutes and junkies, and you'd get ripped off or worse. So students here wouldn't go south of really south of the street that Third Man's on. What is that? Canfield. Yeah, you got to Canfield, that was it. Nobody rode their bikes down there. Nobody ran through there. That's all added to the vitality and the revitalization of the area. Well, I mean, it's been 31 years since it started on the upward trend. I don't see it going backwards anytime in the near future at all. It just keeps getting bigger, more organizations, more venues, more art galleries, more places that people will go to that, were unheard of. I don't see it retreating. I don't see anything that would cause that to happen. Not even Donald Trump can make that happen.